It is 12:59. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. This week in college football, Northwestern has fired head coach Pat Fitzgerald amid allegations of widespread hazing within the football program. Fitzgerald has been the head coach at his alma mater since 2006. Defensive coordinator David Braun will step in as acting head coach. Major League Baseball tonight, the MLB All-Star Game begins at 7 p.m. from T-Mobile Park in Seattle. The 2023 Home Run Derby happening on Monday night. Vlad Guerrero Jr. beating Randy Arozarena in the final round for his first Home Run Derby title. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone. Welcome in, Blaine and Mickey on 104.5 The Zone. With you until 3 o'clock. Lucas Panzica with you in again for the great Mickey Ryan. Well-deserved week off alongside Blaine Bishop, Jackson Williams, our producer, Sammy Kincaid, hanging out in studio as the biggest story right now, dominating not just probably the football world, I think, college football, NFL, is what's happening at Northwestern. Blaine, I mean, there's been developments at every stage of this. How have you kind of processed all of this as someone that knows Pat Fitzgerald, who was just fired?
Oh, he's a class act. If I would have made a guess of 5 coaches that, nothing like this will ever even come close to it, man, he'd be on that list for sure. I am actually stunned. I'm just hoping that something comes out of this, that we find out that it wasn't as bad as it seems for him to get fired. We don't know any details. Obviously, I'm assuming that the presidents and everybody else involved in Northwestern, they're pretty serious there too. So I would assume that they've gotten enough information now. Them relaying the information to him or just deciding to go in a different direction besides 2-game suspension is their prerogative if that's what they deem necessary. So I'm thinking this is just the beginning, because you never know. Maybe the kid or kids involved, maybe a lawsuit was coming to Northwestern and things of that nature. And they said, if you don't do something more, then this is where the direction we're going, because, man, this is a complete 180. I'm actually stunned. I don't know any of the details. Nobody really does, because it was a private investigation.
Yeah.
That they only found enough to suspend him for 2 games initially. So I'm interested to see what else did they figure out, and we may never know. But we'll find out eventually if they come to some form of an agreement on his contract with his legal team and his attorney, his agent, and everybody else on what he may or may not get in his contract. But they had a lot of things going on the campus, as you mentioned, with expansion of the stadium there, which is a beautiful campus. I've been on there off the water there. It's like off a cliff, really, the indoor facility. It's really cool looking out to the water. So, yeah, he is the program. And
Yep.
I'm a guy who actually holds head coaches to a higher standard, especially at the college level. I feel like they are grooming young men and women, and I feel like they should be held to a higher standard. If we got to use the same things as we did with MPF. If he didn't know, he should have known. And I think that's where you go when you're talking about a head coach, especially someone of his ilk has been there over 26 years through his playing career as well as coaching. And if he didn't, then that's on him. I don't know if that's a fireable offense, but he should have, especially knowing who he is as a person and his personality, really engaged in knowing everything that's going on. It's his program. And ultimately, he has to, take the fall, whether he didn't know or should have known or what have you. So it's unfortunate, man. This hurts. I actually want to know some factual information. They're saying it was some sexual type thing going on. I don't know what that means. Like, was, somebody, just dancing in a locker room being guys, or just was it something more that was planned out that they did every year when they went to training camp at this location? So it's I have no idea. So all we can do is speculate, but until we hear the facts of what they have against them, that's worthy of, and you have a judgment if it's worthy of him being fired. But, man, whoever the kid or kids are, they must have came and said, hey, man, we're going to sue then. Yeah, that slap on the wrist 2-game suspension is not enough. That's what I think happened, and that's just a guess.
So he was suspended 2 weeks, but in the summer, before the season.
Oh, so it wasn't 4 games?
He wasn't even going to be suspended for.
I thought it was for 2 games.
The progression of this has been fascinating because it was initially a 2-week suspension without pay this summer. That followed the conclusion of a university-led investigation into allegations made by a former player. That investigation started in January and was conducted by an outside law firm hired by the university that said they didn't find sufficient evidence that the coaching staff knew about ongoing hazing, although there were, quote, significant opportunities to find out about it. So what happened for Pat Fitzgerald?
So he said coaches, so just not him, but also all the coaches.
Sure. Yeah. And maybe there's more to come in that regard. Obviously, Pat Fitzgerald ultimately is held responsible as the head coach. But if you ask, okay, then what else happened for this to escalate to where he's fired? The answer is journalism. Because the Daily Northwestern, the student newspaper at Northwestern University.
Big time now. People mustn't understand this. I know
some of the biggest names in journalism. And we'll just keep it in sports.
Still today.
Mike Wilbon, Stuart Mandel, Darren Rovell. Like some of the biggest names that you read and listen to every day came through Northwestern. It's one of the best journalism programs in the country. The student newspaper published a story. This is from the ESPN article detailing allegations from the former player who described specific instances of hazing and sexual abuse. And that led the Northwestern president to write an open letter to the university community in which he said that they, quote, may have erred in weighing the appropriate sanction for Fitzgerald. And then ultimately, Pat Fitzgerald is fired. Michael Schill, the president of Northwestern, said that the decision, quote, comes after a difficult and complex evaluation of my original discipline decision imposed last week on Coach Fitzgerald for his failure to know and prevent significant hazing in the football program.
So, so two weeks.
Student journalism.
Oh, no. Well, I'm not surprised because it's Northwestern.
Right.
If it was another university that their program, as far as their journalism program, wasn't off the charts, I learned all these things back in, maybe 15 or so, but you always hear Wilbon talking about Northwestern on air. I guess it's a handful of those guys that are nationwide now, big time. But, it has a lot of clout, rest assured, on that campus. So, yeah, I mean, I want to just hear what they were, and maybe it says coaches, and when I bring that up, I'm talking about whether him or assistant coaches should have known, and then that would have been relayed back to him, and they had opportunities. That's what it's kind of saying, and so this one's a tough one. All the semantics of you have to tell a guy you want everything to be smooth sailing, but maybe you didn't think you didn't want to have a conversation with it because the decision was already done. Now watch this. But when a player gets cut and they learn from the media, no big issue, right? And I'm not talking about any issue off the field. I'm talking about they just get cut and be like, boom, hey, man, I didn't hear it till I saw it on ESPN. Well, the same thing happened to Fitzgerald. He didn't like it. So, you got to know what's going on in your program. And if it went on for years at a time, that's when you kind of look at it like this is systemic. There's no way. It wasn't a one-year, one-off deal that passed. If this is something as deep as I think it is, I think, it was worthy probably of firing. We shall see, because they better be right. And like, to me, if he did something wrong, then or should have known, I don't think they should have to pay him anything in his contract.
I saw Andy Staples tweeting today that he was told Pat Fitzgerald had $42 million left. On that contract.
Because he signed a $57 million deal.
So there's more to come from this with Pat Fitzgerald.
He's coming after he's going to get some of this money.
I mean, you're told, all right, 2 weeks, no pay in the summer. You'll be back for training camp. You're back for the start of the season. That's it. We move on. And then a few days later, no, you're fired. And probably with cause. I mean, we haven't seen all the details of that come out. But that's a pretty quick change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they said they did further investigation. You just read it. So they found something that they did not like. It go from 2 weeks, that ain't even 2 games. I thought it was 2 games. To that, I firmly believe these guys aren't presidents, but they're not ding dongs. These guys are pretty sharp.
Yeah.
They may not deal with all these situations in the time they've been president of different universities and everything else, but they make decisions that affect the entire university, and they probably felt like they were pinned in the corner like, this is not good. We have to fire him. It's almost impossible. And that's why I have to agree with what they're doing, because I don't know. And I don't know if we'll ever know. But these guys, they're not making this. This guy is the pro. He is the university, to be honest, to a certain extent. 26 years.
He is Northwestern
as a player,
football.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about even bigger than that.
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
you say Northwestern, Pat Fitzgerald's coming up. I mean, he
that's
is.
fair.
So they knew that they're going to make this move, that this had to be something really serious. And it's just something for I hate it because, man, I know he's a quality guy. Man, dang. That shows you, we shall see. But, hey, sometimes you can make one mistake or turn the blind eye, and sometimes it can come back and bite you in the butt. I mean, really, that's, I hate to say it like it's a joker, but, man, I'm still stunned because I think he's one of the classiest coaches out there. I mean, serious. Like, I would I'd love for my son to go there. Fortunately, he only had a 23 on the ACT. So he could get he got to at least get 25.
But it's a tough place to win, right? Because of that.
Yeah.
Because of those factors in recruiting.
And you wonder if that was part of it. Like, what was his record the last 2 years? I don't think
not good. 4 wins. 4 wins in the last 2 years.
More than 5.
They were 1-11 last season.
Yeah, but I mean, he still had the backing. Man, this is woof. Oh, man, I can't wait. It's going to eventually come out. Somebody, and they keep saying one student, like it's one person. Imagine that. He met with the team briefly when he got his little 2-week, suspension or whatever, and I think it was real quick. I'm wondering if that one person wasn't there, because all the players know who it is.
Yeah.
If it's just one person.
Yeah. It is one person that spurred all of this.
Yeah. So you don't know if he has an axe to grind, but
right.
I was sure if he's the Lone Ranger, he cannot be making up or, embellishing what happened here. And I would think a kid wouldn't do that, but you just don't know. You just don't know. He cost a guy his job if he did do that. And so, what's the ramifications for him? Nothing. They kick him out to school. If it's all comes to naught and he made up this story.
It's a former player, too, that had already left the program.
Dang.
So we'll get into the details.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's big boy stuff right here, man. This is all right down your alley there, Lucas.
We'll get into some details on the actual hazing activity that's alleged, just how surprising this is, that it is Pat Fitzgerald across the college football world, some of the reaction. And we want to hear from you. It's been a busy weekend, I feel like, in the sports world. MLB All-Star break, home run derby last night, the investigation around Northwestern football. So what caught your attention? What has stuck out the most to you over the course of the sports weekend? 615-737-1045. Kyle in Nashville, I see you. We will take Kyle and the rest of your phone calls and continue talking Pat Fitzgerald when we come back. It's Blaine and Mickey on 1045, The Zone.
Yeah, much like maintenance on your car, you want to take care of your system before there's a larger issue at hand. And maybe you've already noticed that the AC unit not acting right. They have trusted, certified technicians on standby ready to find the fix so you don't break a sweat. This includes no service fee with any repair. And maybe things are past the point of repair for your AC unit, so Cool Ray has a solution for that too. Going on now, you have a savings of $1,250 on a brand new Tempstar home comfort system. Plus, they boost the lifetime parts and labor warranty on new Tempstar home comfort systems, including $0 in repair costs for the life of your system. And you won't break a sweat or the bank with that kind of built-in warranty. And don't forget, Cool Ray isn't just there for your HVAC needs. They're protecting your entire home thanks to Cool Ray's electrical team, who can help you find the perfect whole home generator just in time for stormy weather. So schedule your next visit online at coolray.com. No phone call, no wait, no worries. You pick the date and time that works for you. That's coolray.com.
Welcome back. It's Blaine and Mickey on 104.5 The Zone with you until 3 o'clock. Discussing the firing of Northwestern head coach Pat Fitzgerald. Played football at Northwestern in the mid-'90s, joined the staff at Northwestern in 2001, took over at his alma mater in 2006, and led them in, by far, their most successful period in Northwestern football history. 5 10-win seasons in the history of Northwestern football. Pat Fitzgerald has had a heavy hand in 4 of them. 1 as a player, 3 as a coach. Fired after an investigation that was initiated in January by Northwestern University, and then after a 2-week suspension without pay handed down to Fitzgerald, it was elevated from the reporting done by the Daily Northwestern, the student newspaper, publishing a story detailing allegations from a former player describing very specific instances of hazing and sexual abuse, and that has led Pat Fitzgerald to be fired. Northwestern saying that, or Michael Schill, the president at Northwestern, saying that, quote, he may have erred in weighing the appropriate sanction for Fitzgerald. And we have yet to hear from Northwestern brass. That's another component of this, that there's been a lot of criticism, Blaine, levied against the school's administration for not appearing publicly quite yet because they've been on vacation. They held a Zoom.
Right.
With the football team, and a lot of players extremely critical of Northwestern administrators for not being bothered to leave their vacation to deliver this news to the players in person. Now, Adam Rittenberg of ESPN, who has been all over this, reporting on this situation, tweeted 2 hours ago that Northwestern Athletic Director Derek Gregg has returned to campus. He is in the office today, so you'd expect that we would get something fairly soon as far as a press conference from the school's administration. But this is an absolute mess, Blaine. I mean, there's an $800 million renovation coming down the pipe for Ryan Field, the stadium at Northwestern. They already have one of the best facilities in the country, overlooking Lake Michigan right outside of Chicago. Rittenberg also tweeted earlier today that 6 Northwestern faculty members are asking university leaders for the hazing investigation report to be revealed publicly, according to a letter obtained by ESPN. They also want that renovation for Ryan Field to be put on hold until this crisis is satisfactorily resolved. So that's what we've been talking about, is that if it was a university-led investigation, that would put it under Title IX, which would mean that they would be required to release those findings to the public if requested. Did they say they hired an
outside law firm, or did they go through?
It was an investigation commissioned by the university who hired an outside law firm to conduct the investigation. And
Which is not the same as Title IX, though.
So that's what's not clear.
Okay.
Right? That's what we're trying to figure out. Because
we have someone, Sam, you can get on. Yeah. We just, she was the one that, brought to us that where is Title IX in this whole situation, and she has a little background in understanding Title IX. So kind of explain to us what the university should be kind of going through in this process with Title IX.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize, first
Sammy
off,
Kincaid now is, a new employee here with the 104.5 The Zone.
Thank you for that. But a lot of people don't realize, first off, that athletic departments are separate from the university. And also with that, whenever somebody goes to Title IX in an athletic department, that's actually an umbrella that's also under the university. So whenever a university conducts an investigation, that's usually done through Title IX.
And they did it through a separate law firm, as we understand it as today. I don't know if it was,
could also have done the Title IX investigation, but they're also getting a second opinion coming in and investigating it as well, because, say, if somebody came forward with more evidence, they're just wanting to make sure probably that all of their boxes are checked and, we maybe got this at first with the Title IX, but they're bringing somebody else in to maybe do some more, I guess, background, deeper.
Now, what we're getting at is, though, also is this supposed to be public if they go Title IX, and as of today, it's not public information. Now, do they have to make it public, or
if it's Title IX,
they have to? So that's what makes me think it's outside law firm. Maybe Title IX is getting involved at this point, but why don't we have the information? I think that's what the newspaper there on the campus there is referring to, which is, there's some really bright kids that go to Northwestern. As we all know.
No doubt about that. It seems like the student newspaper has just been a step ahead of the university in this. It's such a fascinating dynamic.
Well, why wouldn't they, though, right?
Right.
Don't you know the other student who this one person is? Oh, you know how easy it is to get to, in a private school, to get to somebody at the newspaper? Oh,
right.
Yeah. This is nothing.
Well,
so,
even at a public university, I mean,
it's
that's who
pretty cool, right.
that's who you have classes with.
Yeah,
They're gonna know what's going on.
Yes, they do. Yeah. We had a guy named Jason Whitlock that was over our news.
Yeah, heard of that guy.
When I was a freshman. I was like, oh man, this guy. I got to stay away from him.
This guy's a little inflammatory.
Yeah, he was, man. Even back then, I was like, "Ooh, I'm glad I was a freshman. He's gone." So yeah, I mean, some newspapers are, Ball State has a pretty decent one, nowhere near the level of Northwestern, but there's a lot of information.
That's a David Letterman School of Communications right there.
Oh no, David Letterman is big time now. His buildings, I've been in his building multiple times, but yeah, the Northwestern. So it's good to be informed and see if Title IX's even part of this whole process, because we have not heard them say Title IX is investigation. They didn't say anything like that. Now, I don't know if they have to be public with that, and maybe that would then open them up to actually having to give off their information. But I think they did it all separate first. I think they were trying to keep it in-house to see if it was legit. And then that's typically when it goes to the next step is to Title IX, and then let's say, okay, because you don't want to jump before the horse and then, it becomes nothing.
Right.
So, but hey, they got to do their due diligence, and I'm interested to see if Title IX is part of this whole process, because then maybe we'll know a lot more.
And like you said, trying to keep it in-house. A lot of times people will go to HR in the athletic department first, and then there is a Title IX liaison on every athletic department staff.
Okay.
Right.
And so whenever HR isn't able to handle whatever the situation may be, or maybe the situation's bigger and you need to bring somebody else in, that liaison will help connect whatever's going in athletics
so it could be doing that too,
to Title IX on the university side.
Oh, awesome info right there. Yeah, that could be exactly what's going on here.
Alan Bell has tweeted at us, Alan Bell of Sportsline, at Alan Bell 247. Yeah, love Alan. You hear him on the station all the time. He tweeted, what changed from Friday to Monday is when the admin pushed back, the newspaper had videos and more former players ready to go. He said the paper itself wrote their entire process out, had them cooked. The student newspaper, the Daily
had
Northwestern.
To have some info, because for a president to go from just 2 weeks to this looked like trouble. I'm telling you, because I think lawsuits were coming. I really believe that. That's what would scare a president. Like, either you're going to go this, or because we're going to go down this road and it's not going to look good. And you need to set the tone. Because that's the only way something like this could happen. Whether, Fitzgerald knew or not and should have known, it's a whole nother story. But, dang. It's a little sickening right now for whatever side it is. But, man, Fitzgerald can go down, man. All these coaches dealing with a lot of stuff. This is unbelievable.
So, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's like what you said before the show started. People forget coaches are real people too. And a president, their job is to always protect their university.
Yeah.
And it's tough whenever you're in that kind of position as a head coach, but you're held to just a way higher standard, and you never know. You have so many people doing stuff for you as well. And you really got to protect yourself with who's around you. Yeah.
Typically, how coaches actually think here. Usually there's always kind of somewhat of, I'm going to use the term fall guy. Let's just say that where a coach is going to take it for whether the head coach should have known, and they'll come because they have loyalty to their coaches, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. So I'm just hoping it's nothing, something crazy, but I'm afraid that it is. For him to get fired, and everybody across this country know he's a class act dude. Man, this is serious. I think we're just beginning. I think there's going to be lawsuits all over the place. Yep.
So the conversation naturally turns to, what did Pat Fitzgerald know? What did he not know? To an extent, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's a lose-lose. And if you didn't know, you didn't have that control over your program. And if you did, then that speaks for itself. Either way, you're probably fired. It's like the Rick Pitino thing at Louisville. As much as he wanted to come out and say he didn't know what was going on with players, and everybody, go back and look up what I'm talking about. Yeah, but even if he did it, right? It's like, even if you didn't know what was going on, then you're done. You're cooked.
Yeah.
And that's not an excuse. But the former player who initially reported the hazing activities in late 2022, a player that's since transferred from Northwestern.
We don't know his name?
Anonymous player.
Oh.
He told ESPN on Sunday that the hazing was organized and widespread within the program, often led by a group of older players called the, quote, Shrek Gang. The group would lead a hazing activity called, quote, running, usually against freshmen or younger players who had made mistakes in practice. According to this former player, older players wearing masks would restrain the victim in a dark locker room and engage in sexualized behavior. That's the extent of what we know right now. He said, the former player said that he was, quote, run as a freshman, and he also said that Pat Fitzgerald signaled for players to be added to, quote, Shrek's list with a specific clapping motion during practice. He said he saw Fitzgerald make the motion at least 5 times since the 2020 season.
Uh-oh.
So that
like real trouble, man. My God.
That's as much as we've that is as much as has been said on Pat Fitzgerald's involvement in this entire situation. But that is one of the biggest takeaways, right? Is this how surprising that this is the person?
Every time he's giving signals, so he was kind of, influenced and encouraging this whole behavior, if you want to look at it that way. Go ahead,
and
Sammy.
I just think, just from working in athletic departments, whenever you have interns that are, like we were saying, with that student-run newspaper, and you have interns that say something, whatever you see at practice, it stays at practice, because you see a lot, but they have access to all that footage. And if the newspaper is saying that they have videos, I mean, there's no telling if you go through practice footage, you could probably, if that's true, you could probably find a clip where that's happening. Or if they see it happening, they're running cameras out there at practice. I mean, it's not even just on the video department side of it, but say if it's coach's video, they're as well out there with cameras. I mean, you got plenty of students out there that are videoing practice and things like that happening where it could have been caught. Yeah. If that's true.
Right. Reese Davis of ESPN was on SportsCenter. You see him on game day, one of the faces of ESPN's college football coverage, was taking his reaction on SportsCenter, and I think it does well to illustrate kind of how the college football world and people that know Pat Fitzgerald sort of consume this news. This was Reese Davis on ESPN.
Your general analytical and emotional reaction to this story, which culminates in Pat Fitzgerald getting terminated.
John, I'm shocked by it, and as long as I've been around this sport, not much surprises me anymore. But had someone come to me the day before this story broke and said, there's about to be a story in the sport that involves hazing of a sexualized nature, and it's going to be, fairly rampant and known within the program. Give me 6 guys that you can guarantee it's not happening in their program. Pat Fitzgerald would have been on that list. It doesn't comport with what I've known of Pat over the years, yet the idea that this was not a secret in nature, that members of the football program for years and years had some knowledge of it, whether they thought it was something that was harmful or playful, is sort of doesn't matter at all. I'm really surprised that it was going on at Northwestern, and really shocked that it got to this point. I would like to have seen Northwestern be a little bit more forthcoming in the details of what that independent investigation unveiled. What exactly does it mean that the coaching staff had opportunity to know but didn't? Does that mean they turned a blind eye, which is unforgivable? Or does it mean that just because you're in charge, you're supposed to know everything, which is a much different standard to hold anyone to? Yet, when you're in charge of a program, you are responsible to some degree for everything that happens under your watch.
Dang.
And I mean, that lines up with what you've heard, every reaction you've heard from people that know Pat Fitzgerald, from you, people that have interacted with Pat Fitzgerald. When you talk about culture in college football, it's a word that gets tossed around a lot. It can mean a million different things. But was Northwestern football not almost the definition of that? Of one of the most respected cultures in all of college football for what they were able to accomplish for the last almost 20 years since Pat Fitzgerald's been the head coach there.
But there's so much that happens in athletic departments that a lot of people don't know. And that's why they have their own marketing people. That's why they have their own video. And I mean, the SIDs know absolutely everything. So whenever I'm trying to find something out, that SID is going to be my best friend whenever I'm trying to get those sideline stories. And I mean, there's so much that is under wraps that nobody would have any idea. And they always say, never work for the team you're a fan of, because you're going to see a lot of stuff that is not good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Well said there, Sammy. Yeah, man, and just hearing the video and everything else, it's just, and then like this was something that was going on for years. So just hearing that is just kind of, it's rogue for me. Like that Fitzgerald is doing stuff like this is like rogue for him. Man, I would have never thought like something like this could happen. I was hoping that this was a one-off and it's just happened one-off season or so. But this day and age, man, this modern time, you can't do those things, But maybe I caught the tail end of getting into even the NFL, and that was kind of over with. I mean, besides, like cutting your hair.
Right.
Tying you up to the goalposts and stuff like that. And then, they had to start, kind of changing a little bit of just that. So just to hear some of these things that are going on still today in this modern era, I just think, man, that's a really, really sensitive topic that you have to be on your P's and Q's. And if any of this is true, yeah, so be it. Then he needed to be fired. Yeah, if any of this is true, as much as I'm a fan of him, he can't. The standard is high, and you could say he's part of one of the guys that probably set the standard. And you can't let that happen, especially if you knew now. Just hearing that, and he was giving signals. If that is true, man, dude, yeah, they move quick, and that's the reason why I knew they had to have some proof. I mean, they have video from. Yeah, it's disappointing, actually, because I'm going to say this. You thought Fitzgerald was one of the good guys.
Exactly.
That's really, I feel like I'm duped, and I have nothing to do with the program. And it could have been one time, but it wasn't. He knew. He knew the entire time. And he could have stopped it. So that's the part, and, just don't take him down. And not to say that he won't get another shot, but... this is a tough pill to swallow here, just as a fan of just sports and college football. And Northwestern always kind of being, maybe let's just say a little bit better version, than Vanderbilt is in the Big Ten. So with their success, and maybe it's even, but you always want to see those guys do well because they get it. And they do it the right way, and it's not always about having success on the court or on the field or wherever. It's about growing young men and women. So, this is, man. I'm actually a little hurt a little bit by it, to be honest. You put like Nick Saban. You can go down a list of guys. This is man, he's up there, even though he's at Northwestern. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Like you wonder, Reese Davis said, if there were 6 guys I could pick that I would say, okay, well, it's not him. He said Fitzgerald would be. You said he'd be one of them. Yeah, who else would you be putting over there? Dabo Swinney, maybe Nick Saban, guys of that ilk. Pat Fitzgerald. Like Northwestern hasn't been winning recently. Like we said, they went 1-11 last year. But I mean, this program has 6 bowl wins in their history. He's been the head coach for 5 of them. So. The widespread shock has definitely been a big takeaway in all of this.
Let's take this call right here. Let's go with it.
615-737-1045. Tristan in Brentwood wants to chime in on Northwestern. What's up, Tristan?
Brentwood.
I was wondering, why Pat Fitzgerald, did he really know about this hazing? And, was it hazing you hear about hazing in fraternities or, Pat Fitzgerald sounded like he'd been at the program and he played for Northwestern and he got the job after the Northwestern other football coach died. And I just thought this was odd story of him not knowing and getting fired from his alma mater.
Lucas has some information that I guess the student newspaper had there of some videos and everything else. Kind of go through that again.
Yeah. So, and this is essentially from what we know, former player accounts, players that have remained anonymous, but that the hazing was widespread, that it was hazing of a sexualized nature, and one player account that Pat Fitzgerald, in instances, would make a clapping motion, a very specific motion during practice to signal the older players that there was a younger player that
needed to go through this process.
Go through this process, for lack of a better way of saying it.
He could name 5 times or so.
Right. Yeah, this specific player said he saw Fitzgerald make that motion at least 5 times just during the 2020 season, which was the COVID year, of course, where the last time Northwestern had a winning season, 7-2, they won their division in the Big Ten and won the Citrus Bowl, finished top 10 in the AP poll. Northwestern. Finished top. It was their best finish in the AP poll in the Pat Fitzgerald era. And since then, 3-9 in 2021, 1-11 2022. They beat Nebraska in the opener in Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
And then lose 11 in a row.
Ugh.
So we saw, for the first time, we saw back-to-back years where Northwestern,
was bad.
3 or less wins, was at the bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten. So Pat Fitzgerald, he had blips of 5 and 7 here and there, but back-to-back, this had yet to happen. So you wonder what direction the program was headed in generally, but there's no doubt he had all the backing in the world, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I wish we were doing a season now so Skoronski'd have to answer all these questions.
I'm sure he will. I'm sure they will. Peter Skoronski.
Because guys are loyal, teammates. Yeah. He is not going to, I don't even know what they're talking about. There's no way he's going to throw him under the bus. It's just no way. So it's just like, what was it going on, though?
Right. I mean, that Peter Skoronski, a senior leader on that football team last year. So I'm sure he will get a question.
Were you ever a part of this?
I'm sure he'll get all those. The first opportunity at training camp.
This is absolutely, man, this is horrible.
We'll continue to take your calls on this. 615-737-1045. Your phone calls. And we didn't get to this yesterday, but we know exactly which players every SEC team will send to media days. We'll get into that specifically with Tennessee coming up next. It's Blaine and Mickey on 1045 The Zone.
And Sammy's getting them all. For many of you who have lived here a long time, you already know Eurofix has been in Middle Tennessee area for your European car repair needs now for 24 years. And we've all gotten to watch them grow. And I don't know about you, but I love watching a hometown business take off. Well, we are now proud to announce the 5th location in Mount Juliet for Eurofix on Mount Juliet Road. And Eurofix can serve you in Franklin, Hundred Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now Mount Juliet. Pretty cool getting to watch a small-town mechanic starting in the barn in his backyard of a single-wide trailer and now grow to 5 locations repairing thousands of cars each month. And at Eurofix, you get a 3-year nationwide warranty and as well a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can just visit them online at myeurofix.com. That's myeurofix.com. But always tell them Blaine said you.
Welcome back. Blaine and Mickey on 104.5 The Zone. Continuing to take your reaction on the news of the week in college football. Northwestern football coach Pat Fitzgerald fired due to allegations of widespread hazing throughout the football program.
That's a good question. I'm sorry there. They were talking about, one of the, guys here on the chat talking about why did the kid wait so long? I guess he maybe waited till he was out of the school, or is he first year out or second
Well, he
year
transferred and initially said something late 2022 because the school's investigation initiated in January. So it's been a long, drawn-out process. 615-737-1045 for your reactions. Larry is in Lebanon to talk Northwestern football. What's up, Larry?
Hey, guys. Appreciate you taking my call. First of all, I'd like to say that every day that I'm in the car or at work and it's 1 o'clock, I turn this show on every day. I mean,
appreciate it, man.
You two guys crack me up. And Friday when Blaine was talking about that Brian Dawkins stuff, I was just laughing out loud. But anyway, about this Northwestern situation, I just got to think that when you hear something like this that's happening at a school like that under a coach like Fitzgerald, don't you think that this is probably happening somewhere else also?
Yeah.
And there's probably people shaking in their boots right now. And you got to think that there's athletic directors and administrators and coaches right now getting ready to schedule Zoom meetings all over the place with their employees and their coaches. I mean, it's just hard to believe that it's not. I hope it isn't, but to think that it's probably not happening anywhere else is kind of hard to believe, but let's hope it isn't. But, this is just unbelievable, really.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call, Larry.
Yeah, good insight there. You would assume that it's going on, but what extent? It could be something even minute, maybe like what we're talking about, cutting hair. Maybe, nope, we can't do that anymore.
Right.
Maybe, you get that just strict and said, nope, because this could lead to something else. And that's kind of how the coaches, think. But, yeah, I'm sure there's other. I hope not to this level. It's funny here, Mr. Jones says, next Skoronski interview, did you get hazed or were you doing the hazing? Ooh. They boxed him in the corner.
He's going to field those questions, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's going to get them. First media appearance of training camp for Peter Skoronski, of his first ever training camp as an NFL player.
Man, but we also got some more pertinent information about Title IX from Sammy, who's our expert in the Title IX arena. Sammy, kind of inform us.
I would not call myself an expert.
I'm
educated. Educated on it. But I was looking up Title IX at Northwestern, and I knew that OIE is who does the investigations for Title IX. And at Northwestern, they have renamed theirs to the Office of Equity, is now the Office of Civil Rights and Title IX Compliance. And they have a whole page describing what they do. And for their equity policies, it says that they implement university policies related to discrimination, harassment, and providing reasonable accommodation to individuals with disabilities. So it sounds like they're taking whatever the university is implementing and trying to make sure that the university and athletics is abiding by that. How it's worded on here, it makes it sound like it is a separate, I don't remember the exact words of what they said on what you were reading earlier, the tweet, but having
commissioning an outside law firm to conduct the investigation, right? Like it's an outside party conducting the investigation commissioned by the school or the university. So you're saying that would fall under Title IX?
Yes.
Okay.
Just how they have it worded on here, it really makes it sound like they would be that outside.
615-737-1045. Silas is in Nashville to talk about Pat Fitzgerald. What's up, Silas?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Great.
I just want to say love the show and everything. Yeah. But also just want to say, it's just amazing to me that people in this position and everything, they still don't get that, everybody has a cell phone. Everything is going to be out. There is no way to hide anything anymore. But also the mentality of this as well. We've got to just kind of set a new standard for people to not have to put people down or do anything like that. That just it doesn't do anything. And this mentality or this just kind of like overly man guy kind of thing, it's just dumb. And just play sports, man. Teach your kids, coach your kids, do whatever. Yeah. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Silas.
Yeah. It says here that, they Tyler Dow said that the story says that they have pictures of a whiteboard with a list of the names of the title, the Shrek list. You think somebody took a picture of the board?
I have seen that there was a picture as part of the investigation of the board with some names listed out.
The Shrek list.
I mean, there's a lot there, right? Like, it takes more than a disgruntled anonymous former player alleging something about a coach for there to be this much action.
Yeah.
So I imagine. I mean, this is far from over. Pat Fitzgerald certainly is going to seek, the money that he had left on his contract, $40 million plus. There's a renovation coming down for Northwestern's football stadium. Maybe more allegations come out. We'll see. But definitely one of the biggest developing stories in college football all year.
I also just found on a quote on there for the accessibility resources. It says, "We help the university maintain an inclusive environment by providing resources to help them create accessible digital assets and physical spaces on campus."
There you go. Mm-hmm. We'll switch gears a little bit. Top 10 lists are coming out around the NFL. ESPN does these every summer, the top 10 position lists throughout the National Football League. One Titans player has already been named to one. How many more will we see? We'll talk about it when we come back. Hour 2 of Blaine and Mickey coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.
Who dat?
It is 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. This week in college football, Northwestern has fired head coach Pat Fitzgerald amid allegations of hazing within the football program. Fitzgerald had been the head coach at his alma mater since 2006. Defensive coordinator David Braun will step in as the acting head coach. Major League Baseball tonight, the MLB All-Star Game begins at 7 p.m. from T-Mobile Park in Seattle. Monday night, the 2023 Home Run Derby. Vlad Guerrero Jr., the champion, his first Derby title following the footsteps of his father, Vlad Guerrero Sr., now the first father-son duo to be Home Run Derby champs. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone. Hour number 2 of Blaine and Mickey on 104.5 The Zone. I am not Mickey Ryan. He'll be back next Monday. Lucas Panzica alongside Blaine Bishop today. Sammy Kincaid's hanging out with us. Jackson Williams on the other side of the glass. Training camp 2 weeks away. July 26th. I believe 25th is the report date. The 26th they'll be on the practice field at St. Thomas Sports Park. But, Blaine, this is the time of year where lists are all over the place. I imagine we'll get the top 100 players from NFL films coming up pretty soon. That always happens around this time of year.
I was excited when I got it voted. I was like, I made it to, I think I was,
you were
40-something.
Yeah, 7 or 8 times you cracked that list, wasn't it?
No, man, but yeah, but under 50 is really, it was big. I was like, oh, I now have arrived.
So
I didn't.
Did you crack the top 100?
Yeah.
What was your number?
I was in the 40s. I think might have been my high, like 48, 49.
What did that do for you as a player? Like, what was your reaction? Were you paying attention?
No. Definitely I was paying attention.
Yeah.
But what is getting acknowledgement from, the guys you're playing against.
Sure.
That's really what you really want in that kind of respect, especially a guy that came from the background I came from Ball State and some unknown late draft guy.
Right.
Who nobody knew. And then, some people knew, but, until I got on the map. So, yeah, that's what it kind of acknowledged that I have proven that I can play at a high level for a long time. So that was pretty unique. It's pretty cool.
So I don't know if Jeffrey Simmons is paying any attention to this, but Jeremy Fowler does this every summer of ESPN, the top 10 list for every position on a football team where he surveys coaches, executives, scouts around the league, comes up with the top 10, and they stagger them. They release them. So tomorrow, safeties will come out. Today was corners. A few days ago, they did defensive tackles. So where do you think, Blaine, Jeffrey Simmons landed on the top 10 defensive tackles list for 2023, according to NFL
I'm going to say
staffers?
He's in the top 5. I want to guess the exact. I want to say he's 3.
Ding, ding, ding.
I get it right.
He is.
Oh, I have not seen this list. I was just guessing. Who's number 1? Aaron Donald?
Aaron Donald's still number 1.
I don't know if he's still quite number 1, but he's starting to go downhill. But he's not. He's still, he's pretty. Who's number 2?
Chris Jones.
Chris Jones, right.
Chris Jones, who may be getting an extension at some point soon.
And that's making me nervous with the Julio. I said the wrong name again. DeAndre Hopkins. Because I think if they sign him, that gives the Chiefs a little bit of space to sign him. I'm a little nervous there.
Jeffrey Simmons, who was the number 2 DT on this list a year ago, in 2022, Jeffrey Simmons was the second behind Aaron Donald. But here's what Jeremy Fowler writes about Jeffrey Simmons. Says Simmons was pacing for his first double-digit sack season before an ankle injury affected his explosion late in the year. He fought through it, played 15 games on his way to 7.5 sacks, 7 passes defended, and a second consecutive Pro Bowl. Quote, I'd still take him number 2 because he's very consistent, one NFC executive said. Always plays hard, great against run or pass, affects the opposing game plan every snap. You have to account for him. Fowler says Simmons' 61 pressures over the past 2 seasons are tied for 5th among defensive tackles. Titans signed him to a 4-year, $94 million deal in April. Another quote, this one from an NFC scout. My only concern with him is durability. And he cites Simmons' ACL injury coming out of Mississippi State in 2019 in the draft process.
But other than that, he hadn't had any injury besides his ankle.
That's it. That was it. The ACL he suffered was in draft prep, right? It was not, during a game. He had an insanely fast recovery.
He did, because I was like, this may be too soon. I think he played like after week 6 or so.
October he's on the field.
I was like, whoa.
Towards ACL in January, February, months before the draft. And up until this past season, he really hadn't had a lot of injury problems, and obviously he played through it in 2022. So, what for you, because you seemed slightly surprised that Donald's still number one, or maybe not surprised that he was number one, but I don't know. Are you
I just think the gap is narrowing as where he is compared to everybody else. Where's the D tackle from the Jets as well as the Commanders?
Williams 4, Javon Hargrave, the former South Carolina player with the Niners, 5. Dexter Lawrence of the Giants is ranked number 6. DeForest Buckner of the Colts is ranked number 7. Deron Payne of the Commanders is 8, who also got a big deal this offseason. Cam Hayward of the Steelers, 9, and Jonathan Allen of the Commanders rounds it out at 10.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to disagree with any of those guys, maybe in what order or fashion, but yeah, I think, Jeff's top 3 for sure. That's pretty elite, company there. Because Aaron Donald, I think he's probably maybe 1 year or 2 years away from probably retiring. Because it's going to happen for him because sooner than later is because of his size. At some point, he won't have the power and everything, and his quicks is not going to, you're starting to see signs of it now. He's starting to look like he's just a really good player instead of he's just a class of his own. And that he was. It was no question. Big Jeff is, it's going to be interesting because the Titans, I would suspect Byer to be in the top 10 as well as the King. Anybody else? I don't know. Am I missing somebody that I don't think will be in the top 10?
Yeah, so
no linebackers, no corners. You already did that.
So outside of Derrick Henry and probably Kevin Byard, there's probably not a Titans player in your mind that could finish top 10 on one of these lists?
I don't think so. Unless I'm missing somebody. Tight ends, no. I mean, eventually, but he's not there yet, Chig.
Right.
So, no. Receiver, no. Burks, potentially. I don't know. It's hard to receive. So many good receivers. So I don't know if he'll get to that. Not this after this season, unless he has some phenomenal season. That's probably why they rate the Titans. Total roster ranking is about individual players and how highly gifted they are, but you can still win with really good players, especially responsible players. What I'm saying that is they do their job and they play hard and they play fast, and all you got to do is have a sprinkle of elite players within that. And when I say sprinkle, all of them are elite, but I'm talking about some guys that are off the charts just athletically, or some guys is just they're not from here. And those guys we just named are kind of those guys. Yeah, it's pretty. I would say Byard is the norm.
Where do you think he lands? Ballpark in the top 10.
I don't know of all the safeties. If I think right now, I just know he's in the top 10 for sure. I would want to say he's around 5, but I'm not thinking of all the safeties that's out there. Like, good questions like, okay, is he better than Budda Baker? See?
Sure. Is he better than Minka Fitzpatrick?
Right. See, and some people will be like, I don't know, man, I don't go there for, or just because Minka plays for, the Steelers, and he went to Alabama. He's kind of a bigger name, but the guys in the league know who are really good, and the people who are watching and doing this grading system, I kind of trust that they're pretty accurate. You could say one guy should have been here or there, but Byer for sure is a top 10 player. It is no doubt in my mind. I want to just say off the top 5 or 6. Yeah.
Where do you think Henry lands? That might be even the more interesting.
It's going to be interesting this year because everybody seems to always want to just kind of play into, he was injured. Oh, that was 2 years ago. He came back and had, 1,500 yards or whatever. Do you know that if Henry reaches 1,600 and I can't remember the exact number, Lucas, you're supposed to help me out, 1,625, I don't know, whatever.
It's a hair over 1,600.
Yeah. He will then be the all-time leading rusher in Titans history.
Yeah.
He will surpass Eddie George, who was 10,012 or whatever the number is. So that'll be a heck of a feat. And I think he can do that, especially if they open up this offense and kind of be a little more balanced. I think that's going to open up running lanes for him. Initially, everybody's going to be trying to stop him. And then when you spread them out and throw it, then you bring it back, bring that big hammer down there. And nobody wants to tackle that big old dude, man, running that fast. So, yeah, I think he's going to get it. I would go over, and I would say It's all about preference at running back, and I'll always say that. And I say that because I think Henry's probably a top 5 back, and that's pushing me really hard. I like my running backs to be total accomplished backs in every facet of the game. He is definitely not that. He may be the best runner of running backs, but he is not the complete player. And most of those guys are smaller, so their durability is not as good. The 5'11", the McCaffreys, the Kamaras. I kind of lean towards those guys because I like what they can bring to the table. And you can never predict what the offense is going to do. So we'll be interested to see if his playing time goes down a little bit, or does it stay the same with this new formed style of offense? Because if Derrick Henry's out there, you still got to rerun a Derrick Henry type plays, right? Or are they going to be splitting the running back out and have him run a go and throw to him? Do we see Derrick Henry catching that kind of ball? If he does that, then I would say he was pushing to be the number 1 back. Because that's the next level for me, to see him not only that, but be a better pass blocker in protection. And this has been critical, and I think he works on every facet of his game, and he's gotten better each and every year at everything that he knows that he is weak at, and that I see too as well. And just lateral movement. He used to not be a great lateral mover. I saw him start doing jump cuts. I remember against the Commanders, 2 seasons ago. I was like, whoa, Derrick Henry. It's hard for a big guy to kind of jump cut and do something like CJ 2K. Well, that's phenomenal for a guy that size. Start seeing him do that. That shows he's been working on it, because he never showed that before. If he got in the backfield, somebody got penetration, he was going down because he got to get going. So he started showing that he's going to work on every facet of his game. Elite players do that. They don't run from your weaknesses. You run to it, and you work on it. Catching the ball out of the backfield, downfield, not screens and, these little dump flare passes. I'm talking about back to Marshall Faulk. This dude could run routes like a receiver. I'm not happy for Derrick Henry to do that, but I need you to be a threat. Not to a guy, they're not going to never throw to him, and then the guy's just running, helping somebody else out. So that's where I want to see him kind of impact and see if he can continually evolve his game to be a little bit more well-rounded as a running back instead of kind of that one-trick pony.
What do you think Jeffrey Simmons would have to do this season to be number 1 on this list a year from now?
Stay healthy, and he's growing in the last phase, which I thought he was improved drastically in his pass rush. That was really the final thing. Because what happens is when you become an elite player like Simmons and King, everybody now has you circled on the game plan for the week. We got to contain this guy.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that at the pro level, that means you're a special player. And so that's what they're doing with Jeff. So now he's got to deal with, double downs and double teams, which I think he dealt with last year, and he still was making plays. So that's when you're to that next level. But I want to see him get a little more pressure on the quarterback. But other than that, nothing. He has the hustle. He has the drive. He has the move. He has the power. He has the speed. God gifted all of that to him, and he's evolving it to an elite level. He probably, after the season, we should be saying he's competing for number 1 after the season. And that means he should put in some work and go, man, he put up 10, 12 sacks. He's dominating the run game. He's making plays down the field. I mean, you see this guy run down the field, you'd be like, what the heck is that coming at you? And Lucas, if it was you, I would duck, go down. Yeah, so that's it really. And then just try to see if you can consistently, when you're elite and they're doubling and triple team, you feel like, well, dang, man, I can't make any plays. And you go, everybody else making plays, though. See, and that's what Javon Curse did for us. Different position, but he made everything else easy because everybody had to devote their attention, 2 and 3 guys to Javon Curse, because he was just, he was a freak of nature. And he was probably, the freakest of the freaks. That's why he was called the freak. Besides in my era on our team was Eddie George and McNair. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Feels like it's a good time for defensive tackles in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, you're seeing these deals, Simmons, Daron Payne, Chris Jones, maybe to get Quinnen Williams still has to get his deal. And that's not even including Aaron Donald, who maybe is at the tail end, but obviously still considered
Well, you know what has happened, though, because all the passing and who has the quickest route to the quarterback? The D tackles. And that's why you also see the guards starting to get paid, because they're going to have to start taking on some stuff. Most of these, I would love to ask Jeffrey Simmons this, because most of them did do this that are elite. I'll guarantee he played running back in some point when he was in grade school. The way he moves is too fluid and it's too natural. Yep, he always wanted to be a running back, guaranteed. A lot of those dudes end up being D tackles because they kind of grow their body and they become this big old thing. And I'm like, dang, man, how is he so athletic at this spot? Oh, I used to play running back when I was in fifth grade. So you play running back? How big were you? Yeah. It's like they did with Derrick Henry, except they kept him at running back. Yeah. See? Mm-hmm. I would have moved him to defensive end and I would have got fired. I would have moved him.
Well, Henry's certainly a unicorn in that case, but for most of these guys, playing a bit more of a lucrative position nowadays in the NFL, the defensive tackle. So they'll release the top 10 safeties tomorrow. We'll see just where Kevin Byard lands on that list. When we come back, Coach Dave McGinnis joins us each and every Tuesday at 2:20. It's the Mac Attack on Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. 2 weeks from today, Titans players reporting for training camp.
Come on.
Always feels like it's so far away, and then suddenly, boom, there it is, right in your lap. Coach Dave McGinnis is ready for it. Joins us each and every Tuesday on Titans Radio for the Mac Attack. Coach Mac, great to hear from you as always. How are you on this Tuesday?
Lucas, great. Blaine, how we doing? Hey, look, this thing is sliding down the slide now. Blaine will tell you that as soon as July 4th hits, you start getting ready. And really getting ready, because it accelerates so fast after that. So here we go.
Now, is that you as a coach, Mac, or was that you as a broadcaster when you talk about that July 4th mark, or has that gone unchanged for you in your entire NFL career? That July 4th mark is when you get into that mode.
Yeah, I mean, that's in my DNA now, because I've done this over half my adult life. You know, once July 4th hits, I mean, you're back in the mode. That's why now that I'm broadcasting, I take most of the personal trips I'm going to take sometime in June, because once, the 4th of July hits, then, of course, I come back here now, and I've got, several charity events to do and several appearances to make and all those types of things getting headed for the season. But I've always, ever since I've been in the league, have worked my calendar for July 4th. You better start getting your mind right.
So what has changed for you, Coach, from your preparation for training camp as a coach versus now as a broadcaster? Like, I know how detailed what you and Rhett do before the draft is. What does that look like now this time of year for you?
Well, what I can do now is I can start looking ahead. As a coach, you've got to be able to work. Some other people have to work ahead, but say as a head coach or a defensive coordinator and really an assistant coach, what you're working on is the here and now. Now, I mean, I've already started to look at New Orleans because, they've got massive changes on their roster and, started to look at that. I won't know how they're going to incorporate all those new people until I start to be able to see, what's going on. I'll be very interested to see what goes on in the preseason with those guys, as I will, watching the Titans. But I can start looking ahead and preparing ahead way further than I could as a coach, because as a coach, you're, as I said, especially as a head coach, you've got to be in the moment with what's going on. You have other people on your staff that can start preparing earlier ahead. Your quality control people and those types of things. Now, I mean, I can do a lot of that, because I want to be prepared and especially know the teams that we're playing.
Coach Dave McGinnis, Titans Radio, with us on 104.5 The Zone.
Well, Coach, let's go back to when you were a head coach or assistant head coach. And did you have a written daily game plan that you wanted to do daily for practices, or did that get tweaked? Kind of take us through how do you, I guess, your thought process as a head coach would go through and set your daily practice setup.
Yeah, I like that. That's an insightful question, because as a head coach, you always plan out after your OTAs are over with. You put a preliminary plan out of your, especially of your first 10 days of training camp. And then once OTAs are over, you start to adjust that based on what you've been able to accomplish during those OTAs, whether you think you're on time or not with some of the installation. It also has a lot to do around things that, that come up with injuries or whatever comes up. You have to rework it. You start to rework it, but you need a plan, because I know how you were as a player. You like to have a plan, and players like to know, they don't have to know everything, but they like to know what's coming up, because the more they can know what the schedule is, they can start to work what they do personally to get ready, and everybody's different. So yes, I would have that after the OTAs, and then after the OTAs, I'd consult with my staff. Where do you think we covered what we need to cover? Where do you think we need to cover more? Or how do we need to adjust some of our practices, some of our individual drills, depending on how the people that we were coaching in the OTAs, how they reacted to what we installed. And so absolutely, if you're constantly tweaking it, but at the same time, your players like to know the routine. And I was always cognizant of that.
Has anything changed that's kind of drastic now that you're out of the head coaching industry, with head coaches today that were different than maybe your hurdles that maybe you had as a head coach? Yeah, well, I mean, used to be you could start training camp off with your pads on. Now you've got 3 days of acclimation, and then you could practice. You practice twice a day in pads. And that's completely changed, as you well know.
I mean, that has completely changed, since I came into the league, and it stayed that way for quite a while. But now, I mean, it's different. So with that difference, you adapt to that, and then it has to be different, because there's a whole big change as far as to how you approach getting your team ready when you can have unlimited days in pads, unlimited days of contact, and plus you're on the field twice a day like that. There's a big difference now in the way things are run, because it has to be.
Well, I'm going to bring out your scouting report and your scouting book here. I know they're having a supplemental draft, and I know 2 wide receivers are involved in there from Purdue, Milton Wright, as well as Jackson State's Malachi Wideman, who was a former Tennessee player. So I just kind of break those guys down, if you can recall any little bit about those guys, and would they even have gotten drafted in a regular draft, but they're in a supplemental for obvious different reasons, I'm sure.
Blaine did not do either one of those guys, because they didn't declare for the draft. They didn't declare. So once they didn't declare, well, then I've, in doing over 250 players, I've got enough to do. I can't guess on who else. Right. I can't guess on who else is coming out. So to answer your question very truthfully, like I always try to be,
yes,
here for our listeners and to you, I didn't do them.
Well, I'm gonna give you a over or under. I've never asked you this, but a question like this, and that is, will the King get his 200-yard game? And if you want to double down, you can even tell us the team, because if he does, he will then have the NFL record for most 200-yard rushing games in NFL history, and now he's tied with 6, I think, with OJ and AP. So would you give me over or under, and you can even tell us the team?
Yeah, I have no idea on the team. I don't know how anybody's going to be when you're getting ready to play them. Plus, I don't know how that group in front of him is going to be, or how this new offense is going to. I will say this: the King has the ability to do it. He's got the ability to do it, and I promise you this: everybody that the Titans play, when they put up their defense, you've been in those meetings, those defensive meetings, personnel meetings. That King's got that circle around him, so they'll still be looking for him.
All right, one more over under. 1,675 yards. The King will become the all-time leading rusher in Tennessee Titans history. Over under.
Well, I would love for that to happen for this reason. If that happens, then the productivity of the offense will be ginning like it should be, and that's what we need.
There you have it. Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack.
Well, speaking of what's in front of Derrick Henry, Coach, with the news of Nicholas Petit-Frere's suspension for gambling, 6 games coming down weeks in advance of training camp, even before that July 4th mark that you're talking about, what kind of discussions then start to take place when you have the time before training camp starts and the focus can shift to figuring out all the moving parts on the offensive line and just how to be best prepared to start those position battles in training camp?
Multiple discussions, because that's going to be extremely, extremely important, because you're still going to have to get the continuity of your offensive line together, and then you have to make the decisions. And none of us are going to know. I know you can speculate really all you want about moves they can make and who it might be, but basically it comes down to, do we make 2 moves or do we make 1? That's, I think, what we're all going to find out once training camp starts. But the discussions, Lucas, are multiple, and I'm sure they're ongoing, because when something like this happens, you present all of the scenarios to your staff, and then you let everybody talk through it. And this is not, you don't make a knee-jerk reaction on this, and they've had plenty of time now, so we'll see.
Then how do you handle NPS return, Coach, when you get to see him in training camp and you get to see kind of his form going into the season, but obviously he's not with you for those first 6 games. So knowing for sure, with certainty, that you get him back following the bye week, does that factor in there when you talk about being able to plug him back into the right tackle spot? Or, I mean, is he just kind of right back at square one, having to earn that spot if that offensive line is able to gel and play with some consistency in the early portion of the year?
Well, he'll be in all the meetings, and he can be at training camp, and he will get his reps. Probably won't get the first team reps, because you're trying to get a group ready. But yeah, absolutely, I've had players suspended before that were able to be there during training camp, and the meetings are huge. And then he'll be able to practice. He'll be able to practice until that last cut, and then he will be off the board for 6 weeks. So you absolutely practice him. Now, where you practice him, with who? I mean, that's what they will determine. But look, you've got to get your starting offensive line ready, because for 6 weeks, that's what it's going to be. And it's just like having an injured player. The only thing about that is it's better than an injured player. At least he gets to practice. At least he gets to practice. But nothing's guaranteed. In this league. And so when you're not out there, somebody else is taking your spot. And so we'll see how that works out.
Well, as soon as that suspension comes down, Coach, Titans fans are peppering us with questions, with solutions of their own for the offensive line in those first 6 weeks. And a common one has been Peter Skoronski, switching him to the right side, tinkering that way. Could you just speak on the difficulty, Coach, of switching from left to right or right to left, and kind of what qualities make a player that has the ability to do that, like a Daniel Brunskill that's been able to play all 5 positions in his career?
Yeah, it depends on the individual, depends on the player, and you won't know that until you start to move them. And when Skoronski was drafted, one of the things that was really, really desirable about him was his strong techniques and the ability that he showed, playing there on the edge. And so you knew that those techniques would translate. Now, whether it translates to the other side, you can find that out if that's the direction that they want to go. But to me, I've done that before too, out of necessity, and it depends on the individual. It really does. There's no one size fits all for that kind of move.
Is there a guy you can think of, Coach, that was especially good at that in your career that you could ask to play any position on the offensive line? If there's anybody that comes to mind.
The legend.
Yeah, Pete Kendall from Boston College. He played guard. He's a great guard, but he could have played center. He could have played tackle. He could have played anything I wanted him to. He was drafted, by Seattle, and we signed him as a free agent, and Pete could have played anywhere.
Also the living legend, Bruce Matthews.
Well, that's
that was the obvious one, right?
you asked who I coached that did that. Yeah.
No, I know. That's
Bruce
why I was adding. Yeah.
That's the hitman submission.
Is the ultimate example of that. If you want to go to the pinnacle of being able to move everywhere, you hit it.
Yeah. Also catch punts, play quarterback, punter. He was nothing he couldn't do.
Anything. Invent games before practice that they're still playing. Yeah. So, the guy was special.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio with us on 104.5 The Zone.
Well, Coach, I want you kind of to give us different theories of what this could mean. And that is when they talked about DeAndre Hopkins and the Titans or, any team, let's just say that made an aggressive offer. What could that potentially mean? And give us different ones. Yeah, I don't know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't either. But, anytime they say that, it means it's, we don't know what the threshold is. Anytime I've ever dealt with free agents and dealt with those throughout my career, there's always a threshold that the player and his representation is willing to move up to or move off of. So you've got to know what that threshold is, and an aggressive offer would probably be something near the threshold. Now, how desirable it is, we don't know, because we don't know exactly what the numbers are. But clearly, there's interest. There's interest on both parties, but we're not going to find that out for a while either, Blaine. You know that. DeAndre Hopkins is probably not in any real rush to sign wherever, because he's still waiting to let this market stew around a little bit. But the Titans made their intentions known very, very early, so we'll see. But there's always a threshold. There's always a give and take. All the negotiations I've been involved with during my career, there's always a give and take, and then you've got to reach that middle of détente, so to speak, that everybody's happy with.
Well, I want to have a little fun here. Under the radar player on offense and defense, and I'm not going to say like breakout player, but all of a sudden they become some form of an impact on the team, even if it's a small amount, but kind of a little more surprising that they were having as much impact as most people think.
I'll take Tyjae Spears, and I'll take Arden Key. Because Tyjae Spears being a rookie, I think the guy's got the requisite skills that he can be involved in what you're trying to do offensively in a lot of different areas. And Arden Key never has been a starter. I've always been intrigued with his physical ability, and he's played very well in a rotational basis. So those are my two guys right now.
So if all things go well, then and the Titans make it to the playoffs, who potentially do you think will be the MVP of the team if things go right for them?
Well, I mean, I don't know that, but I know this. You've got some dudes on this team, and normally when you do really well during the season, your dudes are playing very well.
Uh-huh.
And so when you start talking about dudes, you're talking about Jeffrey Simmons, you're talking about Kevin Byard, you're talking about Derrick Henry, and then you want some other guys to become dudes, like Chigga Conquo, and you want Traylon Burks to make another step. So who would it be? I don't know. I just hope we have several candidates to choose from. That means things are going good.
There you have it. Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack.
Every Tuesday on 104.5 The Zone, the countdown will continue. Coach, we will be 1 week closer the next time we talk to you here on Blaine and Mickey. Appreciate you as always, Coach.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Guys, appreciate you guys a lot. See you.
Thank you.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio with us on 104.5 The Zone. He said July 4th. So that was his date of once that date passes, you're in training camp mode. Did you have a date, a specific date that when this day hits, you're locked in? It's all focus on the upcoming weeks.
Well, I think July 4th was a date that you felt like, okay, it's right around the corner. So this was going to be the last time I get to kind of relax and have a good time or, spend with family, friends or what have you, cooking out or whatever it may be at some, party or function or swimming party or whatever. But after that, it's over. It is back to work. But in the meantime, I was a guy that was always working throughout that time. So that was kind of going to be the last time that maybe I take a day or two off and then just kind of debrief. You're never away from it, and it's just hard not to be in the backdrop because you always feel like, somebody else is working. And I don't want anybody to outwork me. So I got beat is because they just were the better player than me. So it all goes from not what's going on during the season, actually what your whole offseason and your build-up and where you're at then in your confidence level, even when things don't go right. So those things that kind of were always valuable to me. So, yeah, this was kind of the time right now. I'll start getting antsy, and especially when we get like 21st. It gets real close because my birthday was always the 24th, so I was never celebrating a birthday. My celebration was I was at camp, and I'm having a good time. I'm rolling. So I'm balling. I'm doing something I love. So, yeah, that was always the birthday gift, whether it was in high school, college, or pros. So I got shaded there on my birthday, man, for a long time.
Well, today your birthday is the day before a report day.
Is it?
Yes, sir. Titans training camp report date the 25th, and they'll be on the practice field the 26th.
Oh, man. The rookies?
I believe so. I'll have to look at the specifics of the schedule. But I believe they're on the field the 26th. So you would have had that one last day if it was if you were still in your playing days. But
yeah. My whole thing is like when you were a vet, like I was, at least how Fisher had it. I was worried about I would come in tip-top shape, and then I wouldn't stay in tip-top shape. I would just be in good shape because now I'm only doing so many reps. The workout and running around with a helmet and shoulder wasn't the same as what I was doing. So I was always doing, extra, let's say, running after practice and trying to do reps on scout team. They thought I was crazy. I was like, nah, man, I'm getting better. I got time. I'm working on. I play corner. I can practice on the scout team. Like, what are you doing? So I'm working on my cover skills. So I just loved it. So I'm sure they have a lot of guys the same way. So
tease this in hour one. Player representatives for SEC Media Days are out. Media Days happening next week right here in Nashville. We have the 3 players for each and every SEC team, including the Tennessee Volunteers. We'll tell you who those are when we come back. Wrap things up on Blaine and Mickey at 104.5 The Zone.
Mason Kinsey. People,
So we started the show, spent really the whole first hour talking about this situation with Northwestern football. Pat Fitzgerald fired, allegations of widespread hazing within the football program. Well, Blaine, the latest on it from Adam Rittenberg of ESPN. He tweets just minutes ago that Northwestern is retaining its assistant coaches and support staff for the 2023 season, the school tells ESPN. The coaches and staff were informed of their status in a meeting with athletic director Derek Gregg earlier today, who was back on campus today. He's been on vacation all week, as has President Michael Schill.
Right. Everybody thought this was downtime.
Right.
Which typically
Nope,
usually is.
Not so much. But Northwestern retaining its entire staff as their defensive coordinator will be the acting head coach for this season. But you imagine that there will be a clean house at some point, right? Whenever the new head coach comes in.
I think is new this year. Is his first year.
First year.
So, this all makes sense. I mean, you got to keep your – I mean, if not, then you just had a cluster of how are you going to go try to hire some coaches at this point in time for what? You might as well keep all the assistants and keep it moving until it's over. And probably most of those guys are going to be networking and trying to look for a job anyway because they know it's over.
Right. One of those guys, Mike Bajakian, former Tennessee offensive coordinator under Butch Jones. But David Braun, named defensive coordinator in January, he will be the acting head coach.
Do you know where he came
in
from?
2023.
I don't remember where he came from.
I can find out. It's not a name that I had heard. And I didn't know Mike Bajakian was on that staff until very recently. He was Butch Jones' first offensive coordinator when Butch was hired at Tennessee, came from Cincinnati. So he was the 2021 FCS Coordinator of the Year, North Dakota State.
Oh, okay.
North Dakota State, the Bison. Helped lead the Bison to 2 national championships.
All over the place, man. They got guys in the league, coaches all over the place.
So welcome to being a Big Ten head coach, David Braun, at least for the time being.
Man, he looks at it as an opportunity.
It's quite a situation to walk into. Hired as the DC in January, head coach gets fired. Maybe going to be a clean house of the whole program, but you're the acting head coach in the meantime.
It's short-lived for you for sure. Dang.
SEC Media Days starts Monday of next week at the Grand Hyatt, right down the road. I can't wait. We're going to be there. Every single show will be live Monday through Thursday. So Tennessee's day is the final day. We don't have the exact times yet of when Josh Heupel and other head coaches will speak, but we do know the 3 players that every program will bring to Media Days. 5 quarterbacks will be in attendance. One of them is Joe Milton. Tennessee going to take quarterback Joe Milton, defensive lineman Omari Thomas, and tight end Jacob Warren. 3 upperclassmen leaders will be accompanying Josh Heupel here in Music City.
Man, and did he recruit only just Milton? I know he transferred for him.
That's a great point.
I think the other 2 guys
he only brought in Milton. That's a great point. He inherited Thomas, who was recruited by Pruitt out of Memphis, and Jacob Warren was a Butch Jones recruit. Out of, I believe, Farragut High School.
In he was more of a basketball player in high school, I think, and then he convered.
Yeah, very long-term developmental guy who came in really with a smaller frame. And announced he made an announcement that he would come back.
He's been a contributor here the last couple of years too, especially in offensive receiver, running back driven, and he makes catches, he impacts the game, blocking. So all leaders, well spoken. So all 3 great guys. So
I know Omari Thomas is a guy that Rodney Garner, Tennessee defensive line coach, has specifically mentioned about wanting to see more from him as a vocal leader with that group, just waiting for that guy to sort of emerge. That they've had a sort of a clear-cut guy in that regard each and every year, and they're looking to Omari Thomas for that. And I don't know, maybe him coming down to Media Days might be indicative of that he's taking some of those steps. But Jacob Warren will be fascinating this year with the way Tennessee uses their tight ends. In 2023, the transfer from UC Davis, McCollin Castles, Warren himself, and Ethan Davis, the 4-star freshman out of Georgia, who's coming off of an injury. I think he should be healthy by training camp, but it's just not an offense that's utilized the tight end position.
Yeah, not a lot. So it's not attractive to some, that are tight ends that are pass catching. They know, you got to spread them out. And
they play a lot of snaps, but as pass catchers, right?
Yeah. You impact the game. Some games you may get a couple passes. Some games you just maybe you may even rotate in the backfield and be a blocking fullback. So I like all the versatility that position brings, and it usually translates to the NFL. Depending if you get an opportunity, whether it's a free agent or late draft pick or not. What was the kid that they had last year? Fant. Hey, did he
Princeton
get
fan.
Yeah, didn't he get in somebody's camp?
He got in somebody's camp. Oh, I'd find Princeton.
But see, like he was kind of that jack of all trades. He wasn't, a great downfield. Like he didn't have a niche. He was real good at everything, but not great at one thing. So yeah, those guys usually end up making it in the league, and I think Warren has a shot as well.
That's it for us. SEC Media Day starting Monday in Nashville. We'll be there for that. But in the meantime, 3HL will take over at 3 p.m.
But in the meantime,
and in between time,
peace.